Competitive Europe Summit. I'm Nick Vinocour, and I'm Politico's Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent. Today, Europe is on the brink. 80 years after the end of World War II, 30 years after the formation of the European Union, the continent is up against unprecedented headwinds from China, from Russia, even from the United States. It's a pivotal moment, and above all, it's a test of European unity. What will it take to align the EU member states to greater integration, greater unity? And what role does Ukraine play in this story and in defining the next chapter for the EU? I want to remind everybody you can talk about this event on the social media of your choice. And without further ado, I'm very happy to welcome our distinguished panelists on stage. I will introduce Arantxa González-Laya, Dean of the Paris School of International Affairs at Sciences Po Paris. Thank you. David McAllister, member of European Parliament from Germany for the EPP and chair of the AFET Committee in Parliament. And joining us online is Taras Kachka, Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration of Ukraine. Thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear us, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, in any case. We will get going and patch him through. Ms. González-Laya, I will start with you. Today we have European leaders meeting in Copenhagen for an informal summit. And and they're discussing everything from defense to enlargement. These are some big, heavy questions on the table. I want to ask you, do you think these leaders are up to these challenges? Are they able to address some of these big issues that are on the table for the EU? Are they falling behind the times in terms of the urgency of what's...
So, yes, it is unprecedented, in an unprecedented moment for Europe. Yes, there is a premium to unity, but there is also a premium to action. And I think the most important message they should hear is that voters hate hesitant leaders. That's the message that I would send leaders in Copenhagen. Voters hate hesitant leaders. And it's tough to make progress today. They know what needs doing because it's been laid out. It's on the table very clearly. A number of people have said that, from Mario Draghi to Enrico Letta to former President Nisto. All of this is on the table. What we need is three things that are not on the table. First is we need clear deadlines. We need to know by when things are going to happen. Second, we need a sense of trade-offs. We will not succeed if it is just working on one topic. Because there are different offensive and defensive interests around the table. So we need a sense of what are the trade-offs, what's the package that they can get to. And the third thing we need, and we've not been very good at that, even if the citizens feel it very clearly, is a sense of the costs of not doing it now. So what would it cost? Because that's also sometimes, a good incentive to get going.
We're here at the Competitive Europe Summit. You mentioned the Draghi report that was published a whole year ago. What's your sense of how well the leaders are doing in bringing about that vision Mr. Draghi described? Are they falling behind?
So it's the Draghi report and it's the Letta report. It's the two. That's the basis of what needs doing now. And in a nutshell, is trying to find a new balance between three dimensions. It's no longer unidimensional or bidimensional. It's three dimensions. It's competitiveness with sustainability and with security, the third leg that should not be forgotten. I think, let's say that the going is too slow. The going is good in what's going, but it's too slow. So again, no hesitation now, because hesitation will have a political price too.
Well, that leads us directly into Ukraine. Our next guest, Mr. Kachka, thanks very much. Ukraine is obviously a crucial partner for Europe. There's also a shared challenge in Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Could you tell us a little bit about what Kyiv is doing to already integrate itself into the European economic area? What's happening there behind the scenes to make Ukraine part of Europe already? Well, we're not hearing. It's intriguing.
Yes, because
There we go.
I muted myself. That was like
You're unmuted.
it's the best way to talk to big audience, just like being muted. Yeah, so that and to talk to yourself. So greetings. I'm on my way to Copenhagen to the European political community meetings, so that we are doing a lot, and our economy is doing a lot on integrating Ukraine to the EU, and. Our majority of our trade is with the EU, 59%, and sometimes the efficiency of Ukraine in a trade also create a lot of concerns in European economy. On the pages of Politica, we had a lot of articles about the farming community in the EU reacting on Ukrainian export of agriculture. But a part of agriculture, we are also a part of supply chain in steel industry, and steel industry is one of the core element of competitiveness. And it's really interesting how relatively old industries are becoming key for competitiveness of the European Union. So energy generation, and Ukraine is integrated with EU electricity markets, and of course it helps us now when we suffer from some shortages of electricity, but as well we export a lot to the European Union. Steel industry, starting from iron ore, and where decarbonization of iron ore in Ukraine can bring a lot to decarbonization of steel industry in the European Union. Efficiency of agriculture, especially like using Ukraine as a feeding base for animal farming in the EU, also brings more efficiency and competitiveness, global competitiveness for the EU. Of course, all these statements are also very related to the fact whether Ukraine is treated as a competitor or partner, and we are on our road to prove and to ensure that we are rather partner and not competitor. And this is also reflected in our trade regime between Ukraine and the European Union. The most recent review of agricultural tariffs are actually accompanied by the additional commitments to apply EU production standards. Majority of them are already applied by Ukrainian farmers. So that's why the general design of Ukrainian integration with the EU is to bring more competitiveness, to bring more competitive advantage to EU economic engine. In many regions of the European Union, as in Spain with agriculture, or in Germany or Czech Republic with steel, and many other states. So this process of acceding of Ukraine to the EU is not only a political projects of bringing unity on the continent. It's also quite important that to remind that iron wall. And that's why the EU is really a project of unity on the continent. And now with unity, we can also ensure the efficiency and global competitiveness if Ukraine is included in the perimeter of EU single market.
Yeah, thanks. And we can come back to what the EU has to learn in terms of defense also from Ukraine and dealing with the drones. But I do want to mention Ukraine is making a lot of efforts, reforms, integrating itself, but the actual process of joining the European Union has not officially started, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Literally, yesterday we completed the screening part of accession process.
Yeah.
It is still preparatory part, but very essential part of the process. Now, the EU and Ukraine, we know exactly what we need to do.
Yeah.
And of course, we wait for formal opening of clusters, where we miss only one voice of Hungary to support the opening of cluster one. And I hope it will be resolved quite soon. And as well, there are a lot of discussions on how we can continue without any pauses in this process.
Right. I do want to give you a chance, because there is a proposal on the table in front of the leaders in Copenhagen to change the rules slightly so that you can open your first negotiating cluster. I wonder if you have a message for the leaders in gathering in Copenhagen who you'll be seeing today. Some of them are a bit more skeptical. We had a story this morning. We spoke to some of the member states saying, well, we're reluctant to give up our veto power. What do you want to say to these leaders at this moment about the path to membership in the EU and how important it is to keep?
We are not asking to review the classical treaty unanimity on enlargement, and definitely every member state will have its veto, final veto for access of any new state. But we really appreciate the initiative of Antonio Costa on changing from unanimity to QMV within this process. It doesn't mean that some requirements of some member states will be omitted, because all member states are working on benchmarks for every candidate state, including Ukraine. But it will bring more efficiency on internal, intermediate process in the accession negotiations. But for us, it is important to be in agreement with every member state on the conditions of accession of Ukraine to the EU.
Thanks very much, and we'll come back to some of those questions. David McAllister, thanks for being here. Good seeing you. Now, top issue in Copenhagen is defense. We're talking about how to ramp up Europe's defense capacity, also some questions about how to organize it. I wonder if you can just set the stage for us a little bit in terms of what's at stake for European defense this week, and what are the big challenges we're dealing with right now?
Well, I would say the four big challenges for the European Union in this term are competitiveness, climate change, irregular migration, and security and defense. And at the end of this decade, at the end of this term, we need the fully fledged European Defense Union. That means it's mainly the member states who are responsible for their military capabilities. They have to spend more, they have to invest more, they have to work more closely together with other European partners and allies, but the European Union also plays an important role. And the role the European Union has to play is when it comes to defense industry, when it comes to military mobility. This is where the European Union has made a lot of very concrete proposals. And it's a bit like with the Draghi and the Letta report. All the reports are there. Everything has been written down. But please, we now have to start the concrete implementation. That is key, and that's why I hope the message of the leaders in Copenhagen will be that we are going to get very serious now on implementing what exactly the Commission has proposed when it comes to defense readiness.
That's right, and there was a paper circulated. The Commission has come out and identified a number of projects that we can all do together to bolster our defenses. You might have heard of the drone wall. This is very, very current. But there is a debate there about how we steer these efforts. European countries are going to spend a lot more money. We've committed to 5% GDP, but there is a question of whether the big project should be steered here in Brussels, or more the responsibility should be in the capitals. I wonder if you can give us a bit of insight into what's at stake there, and maybe what the thinking is in your constituency about these things.
Well, first of all, I very much welcome that finally member states have agreed to heavily increase their defense spending. The 3.5% target plus the 1.5%. These are very, very ambitious targets, but they are necessary because the threat by the Russian Federation is very serious. So it's mainly the member states who will decide to buy new battle tanks, ships, fighter planes, whatever. But there are certain projects where I would ask to see for a more European dimension, especially when it comes to the drone wall, when it comes to air defense in general, cybersecurity, how to defend our critical infrastructure. These are things which we should work more closely together at European level. Today, the format chosen by Prime Minister Frederiksen, I think is a very intelligent one. Bring the leaders into a small room with not much staff, just the leaders, and don't put them under time pressure. Have an open debate. And in the end, there are two philosophies, as you mentioned. Either these projects, especially the air defense shield, will be led by the Commission, or it will be led by the member states. Key is, in the end, what Germany, France, Italy, Poland, the big players, what they say. Look, if it's Commission-led or member states-led, for me, that is minor. The main thing is we get it done. But if the member states really want to lead it, then they have to be serious. What we can't afford is losing more time in nitty-gritty, rivalries between certain capitals, as we have seen, unfortunately, on other defense projects.
Quite right, quite right. And one of the things, there have been rivalries about battle tanks and fighter jets and things like this. But one of the points made to me by someone preparing the summit was, well, the drone wall is a brand new thing. It doesn't exist before, so this is something where we could get started as Europeans and sort of start out from nothing. Mr. Kausler, I want to ask you for a bit of insight into Germany, not always totally transparent for those of us outside Germany. There's been a massive mindset change on spending, on defense, and on investment. I want to ask you to tell us a little bit about that, but also ask you, does this also extend to Europe? The thinking, does it extend to, it take place in a European context that Germany also wants to push ahead with integration and unity on these big challenges?
Well, there's obviously been a change in mindset in Germany. It took my country quite a while to realize how serious the situation is. Perhaps we missed some urgent wake-up calls, but now Germany is fully committed to increasing defense spending. We've seen these historic decisions taken by the former German Bundestag, 500 billion euro additional investment in our security and defense. That is unprecedented, and this will change the face of the German armed forces with our target to become the strongest conventional army in Europe, as Friedrich Merz has pointed out. The German approach has always been, there are three dimensions of European cooperation. The one is, what are the member states doing within the framework of NATO? Then we have the bilateral, trilateral cooperation among some member states, and then we have the dimension of the European Union. And that's why Germany will play a very active role. I think the position of the German government can be summed up in one sentence. We want to remain transatlantic, but we will need to become much more European in the next years. And I think we have to take the reports of our security services extremely seriously that the Russian Federation will have the capabilities of testing a European NATO ally by the end of this decade. That means we only have a few years left. And that's why it's so crucially important, not only that we spend more, not only that we invest more, but we need to do it in an intelligent way. And an intelligent way, from my point of view, means much closer European cooperation, and to continue, and I'm addressing the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, to continue the incredibly brave women and men in Ukraine who are not only defending their own country, their own territorial sovereignty and integrity, but they are defending the European peace and security architecture, and they are giving us the time by trying to stop Mr. Putin, and they will stop Mr. Putin, but we are ready to deter in a better way by the end of this decade.
Thanks. I'll go back to, I think our Deputy Prime Minister has gotten an important phone call, so I will we'll pivot to something else for the time being. But there is some very interesting concrete cooperation going on between Denmark, among others, and Ukraine. And they also have a great deal of expertise to teach us. But coming back to you, Arantxa, I want to ask, what are some of the barriers that we still need to knock down in the European Union? We talk about a defense union. We talk about a single market. When you look at the work that's still to be done, you said we need to go faster. Where are you putting your spotlight right now? What do you think are the sort of immediate challenges? We talked about defense union. Perhaps there are other areas that we need to address right away.
Yeah, to answer your question, I mean, first on defense, I very much agree with David. It's important to remember this is not just about throwing money on the table. Spending money and investing in defense will be very important, as it will be to spend it more efficiently than we do today, and for that we need maybe a bit more European Commission helping oil the integration from an industrial point of view of that market, which is a very specific market, and it would be important to invest as Europeans. And in this, probably not only as European Union, but also as Europe, including with Ukraine, including with the UK, including with Norway, including with Turkey, with partners that are going to be, from their different angle, contributing to the innovation in the defense and security industry in our continent. In addition to this, in my view, there is two very important areas to, in a way, build the resilience of Europe. One is energy, because energy is at the core of the competitiveness of the European industry. And on this, I think it's pretty clear what we need to do. And I would say it's pretty low-hanging fruit, which is building the European Energy Union. We now know that the mix that we can have to go to decarbonation can be different in every member state, but integrating energy markets, lowering the cost of energy in the EU, I come from a country that has shown it can be done. Mm-hmm. It's a country where the cost of energy is 20–30% below the average of the EU. It can be done. So let's do this at the European scale. The second one is capital markets. Mm-hmm. We speak and we talk a lot about that, but this is an area where having the European savings to invest in European priorities would be essential. And on this one, maybe the 28th regime that is being talked about, that is on the table, may be able to give us a bit of a help.
I want to bring up one challenge, which seems to be a lot of these things you're talking about, capital markets union, talking about the defense union. We're touching up on questions of sovereignty, because countries are either defending a financial market or defending a homegrown defense industry or defending things like this. This is why it's so challenging and hasn't been done for decades, if I'm not mistaken. So can you tell us a little bit about, are we going to have difficult conversations about the limits of national sovereignty and about giving a little bit more to the European level? Are leaders putting that on the table? Are they being as explicit and clear about that as they should be, about what's at stake here?
I'm glad that you put this topic on the table, because it's the topic of what does sovereignty mean in the 21st century? What does sovereignty mean in the European continent? Is sovereignty the sovereignty of Luxembourg, of Spain, of Belgium, of Denmark? We have learned the hard way that there is only one sovereign way, and this is the European sovereign way. Now, let me say that the reason why it's taking time is because not everybody within the European continent see it in this way. There is 3 tribes in Europe. There is tribe number 1, and it cuts across our European Union member states, are those that understand the only way is to integrate. There are those who believe the only way forward is to disintegrate, is to go national, behind the border, sovereignists. And today they are a little stronger than they were in the past. We can't do, we have to put up a good fight if we want these tribes to get a better balance. But then there is another tribe, and it's important that we treat also this third tribe, are those that would like to integrate from an economic point of view, but on the security and defense, they hesitate in building a European defense and security space, because they don't know that if the moment comes, they can count on Europe to come to their support, which is why it's so important that right now we treat what's happening with incursions of drones, of planes into European space as a European issue, and that we respond as Europe in order to get this third tribe more comfortable with the idea of integrating.
Absolutely. I want to go back to our Deputy Prime Minister. Sovereignty is something Ukraine fights for every single day. What sort of message do you have to EU leaders? We see discussions about, well, we're holding on to veto power, we're holding on to surveillance of our national markets. You kind of have bigger challenge on your hands, don't you? What would you advise the EU leaders as they face these major challenges from Russia, but also from other big powers?
First and foremost, let's talk about technical defense topic. Yes, so there are a lot of discuss about transatlantic unity and more role of Europe in defense industry. But if we are talking about role of Europe, it is important to bear in mind that in case of drones that actually change the warfare now and or the, let's say, most modern war equipment to defend and also attack, unfortunately, in case of Russia. But the question is that how many Chinese details and spare parts in these drones? And this is the biggest challenge of Ukrainian drone industry, is to localize as much as possible, and we rapidly localize production of all spare parts. We started with simple assembling, and now we have a very essential share of localization of the spare parts. So that's why here, when we are talking about drones, defense industry is changing and might discover that we are relying on very simple details and spare parts that are produced not in Europe but elsewhere. So that's why industrial policy, general industrial policy is extremely important for defense capacity of Europe in general. And this is the maybe even more important thing than relations with transatlantic relations in defense industry. Second big thing, what Arantxa mentioned about capital market, about energy. Ukraine would not survive without integration with EU electricity market. The fact that we actually attached our electricity grids to the EU and at the really literally first day of Russian aggression on 24th February 2022 saved us. It is save line for Ukrainian society when Russia starts to destroy our energy system, and we really need some supply, urgent supply, emergency supply of electricity to Ukraine. And the same with capital, so that what we see is the greater role of member states and dialogue with particular member states on providing finances for military support and finances for macrofinancial support. And what is interesting is that we see how the model of support to financial support to Ukraine also reflect this, let's say, evolution of new unity in the EU, when the European Union and European institutions are used as a primary framework for support that is provided as a decision of national governments in the European Union. So all the lessons learned from support to Ukraine in times of war also are lessons that need to be used within the European Union, since Russia actually goes the path of Hitler. So that's this military beast Putin will be defeated can be stopped only by when it is defeated. Otherwise, it will spread war across Europe. So that's why we need to remind ourselves how to be united, how to make the coalitions on different topics, from drones to finances, more efficient. It also needs to. It's also a message for Europe to recast and to critically reassess this mechanism of cooperation between member states themselves and member states and the European Union. It doesn't mean that we need new legal framework, but we rather need to have a new political culture of more solidarity and more careful, more care about each other, about common interest. Of course, sometimes the procedures and rules are really complicated within current circumstances. That's why more flexibility is needed. But what is more important is a political vision on more unity and more integration in all markets and in all areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McAllister, we're hearing now about the importance of investing in Ukraine. Now, some people describe the support for Ukraine as a kind of zero-sum game where Europe is losing money by helping Ukraine. How do you respond to those sort of critiques? Are we simply sort of paying for somebody else's war, or is this somehow helping the EU itself?
Well, as I just pointed out, the Ukrainians are not only defending their own country, their own territorial integrity and sovereignty. They are defending the European peace and security architecture. And if the Russian Federation were to succeed in this war, this would have devastating consequences for Europe, for the entire world, because then the message is clear, the bullies have the say. That's why we are in this together. And it's about us supporting Ukraine, not only as long as it takes, but whatever it takes to bring Ukraine in a position that the Russian president understands that he cannot succeed in Ukraine, he cannot win this war, and then when Ukraine is in a position to actually be at eye level with Russia, then peace might happen, might come. And that's why investing in Ukraine is so crucially important, economically, financially, and to continue our military support. And of course, now the Americans are withdrawing their financial support. Right. This is another huge burden and challenge for us in Europe, yes, and that's I very much welcome that today the leaders are again trying to find a flexible solution, how to mobilize the frozen Russian assets. Right. To support Ukraine. This is of crucial importance, and I think more and more people are finally realizing in Europe what a serious threat the Russian Federation is, as long as we have a dictator with a clearly imperialist agenda sitting in the Kremlin.
Right. On the frozen assets, I mean, we're seeing some new thinking here, and I believe your chancellor in Germany has voted in favor of using these frozen assets to help Ukraine. Is it really a time for sort of thinking outside the box on a lot of, you hear the same answers over and over again on frozen assets, on enlargement and things like that. David McAllister, do you think it's time to really start thinking outside the box in Europe?
I attended the Foreign Affairs ministers' meeting in the informal format in Copenhagen a few weeks ago, yeah. And already this was also the debate then. Mm-hmm. And yes, there are different opinions among member states, but I very much welcome this new proposal by the Commission. I think this is already thinking out of the box. The Commission has really tried to work hard to find a solution, and Chancellor Merz, for instance, has indicated in general he would be in favor of this Commission proposal, but he has always argued, of course, we need a solid legal basis for all our activities, and of course we need the support of all our member states. And in this question, of course, the country we are in here this morning, Belgium, of course, plays a crucial role because most of the Russian frozen assets are here located in Belgium.
Right. I want to go back to you, Deputy Prime Minister, because obviously, the assets are still frozen. They're still here in Euroclear. But there is thinking about what we would do with the assets if we were to be able to deploy them, either by using the principal or a loan. And some European ministers are saying, you know, this money should be given to Ukraine, but also with conditions of investing in European armaments and supporting the European Defense Ministry. What would Ukraine do with this money? What would be sort of the most urgent use for the frozen assets? How would that be put to work? Can you just tell us briefly? I think we have about a minute left.
Yeah. So that's I think that now it is clear that Ukraine is developing the army that will defend Europe as well in case of direct attack of Russia against other European states, and will be core instrument of deterring Russia from do this, and is a core element of security guarantee. So that's why we believe that the majority of these funds should be dedicated to Ukraine and its needs. And what we see now is that Ukraine is developing cooperation with a lot of member states in the European Union on increasing defense capabilities, new defense capabilities in drones and modern techniques. So that's why I think that the question is that how to organize it best. And the best way is to really allocate these finances to Ukraine and take Ukrainian army and supply to Ukrainian army as a core element and core aim of using this money.
There you have it. Thanks very much. I want to thank all of you, David McAllister, Arantxa Gonzalez, Mr. Kachka, joining us online from Ukraine for joining for this very interesting panel. We heard about sovereignty. We heard about integrating the Ukraine into the European economy, the European Defense Union, and we've heard about thinking outside the box, how the moment encourages us to think in new ways. You can remain seated here. I want to invite Carlo Martuscelli on the stage. He'll be moderating our next panel, which is about thinking beyond the Draghi report. Is Europe actually moving forward? Thank you very much.